If you did, you'd always get psyched out. It was funny because 2 years ago, Franco Pantoni and I were in San Diego. And before the race, here are all these real skinny guys out there, national champions from around the world. It was a world meet, and all these guys, oh yeah, I'm going to run this speed and this speed, and none of these speeds that they were telling us they were going to do or had done had we even come close to. And by, a half hour into loosening up, Franco was depressed. It's easy to get him depressed under any circumstance. He's Italian and single, and so I said, Franco, so he says, what are we racing for, Gary? He says, we're going to be last. They're going to lap us. I said, Franco, who are you racing against? You can only go as fast as you can go. It's either going to be as fast or not as fast as these guys. I said, but you have to determine your race. You've already let them psych you. And so when the race started, all these guys went out like a bullet. We were way back. The difference is, by the second lap, we caught them. And by the last lap, we were 100 yards ahead. I took the gold, he took the bronze. And then afterwards, he said, what happened to all those guys' fast times they said they were going to do, right? I said, that was their psyching. You just did what you could do. But a lot of times people don't even do what they think they can do. They hold themselves back because they think they're competing against someone else. If you think you're going to be competing, you tighten up. It's in what's natural within you. All you can do is the best you can do, and honor that, whatever it is. And what happens is frequently, it becomes the best at that moment that there is around. That's how people get ahead. But nothing ever happens. You never get ahead with your own life if you're not willing to actualize. You got to let go of this living in the fantasy. You got to do it. Every time people start to do something and they pull back, and then they go on a diet and they're off, they start to train, they're off, they start to do their work and then they fall back, they start to live their ideal existence and they fall back. It's because they don't have the confidence to believe they can actually do this. They don't think they're worthy of it. They're judging themselves as if their parents were judging them. Oh, you're not good enough, you're not, and they believe it. Vulnerability. If you're uncertain of your vulnerability, it's only by being vulnerable that you grow. Invulnerable people don't grow. Now, they may get ahead, but they're not growing. They've done it by sheer push. And we don't honor people like that. Remember, it's not just what you gain in the moment, it's your legacy that counts. What have you really left? There are a lot of people who became CEOs and people of prominence in our society, but it's only those who had the nice hearts that we remember, not those who got there the wrong way. You cannot hide from what you've created, and people don't realize it. In the short term, people will do that. They'll get away with it. Not in the long term. History reveals itself and reveals the individual. Look at Kennedy. Look at the people of his ilk. His whole family's ilk are all liars and disgusting human vermin. I mean, that's the best I can say for him. If you only knew all the truths that come out. Just listen to Hidden Agenda series. You see, these were not nice, these were not Camelots. These were not nice people. And to this day are not nice people. But that's not important. History has shown it. But in the moment, they could do no wrong. But we've got to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. If you're not vulnerable and you're not willing to realize that with vulnerability, people cannot throw you off. It's when you're not vulnerable that you are most likely to victimize yourself. A simple hand movement. Stand up for a second. Rigid hand. Now watch his body as I push. Now, relax your arm. Relax it. Relax it. I'm pushing, but his body's not moving. As he relaxes and surrenders to the need to hold it, he's creating a balance from his center. His center remains balanced. If he becomes rigidified, as the metaphor in his beliefs, then any point I push on him is going to throw him out of balance. The rigidity becomes his ego. So if I touch his ego on any level, the center, which is not balanced, because it's run by ego, is going to overreact. Thank you, Jacinta. So we have to ask ourselves, have we over-rigidified ourselves by our belief systems, our needs, our artificial thoughts of life? Or are we open and vulnerable and flexible? The more open and vulnerable and flexible we are, what happens? We can move with it. All right? I didn't like it, but it's gone. This happened, it's gone. I'm back to where I was. I'm back to where I was. I'm love, unconditional love. It doesn't matter how much hate comes at me. I'm still going to be love. Tomorrow I'm going to wake up, I'm still going to be filled with love. But you rigidify by the ego, hate, I hate. You hate in return, I hate in return. You're out of balance. Now you're focused on your hate. There's no option to hate, violence. What comes of this? Destruction, negativity. You got to learn. Got to let go of that need to control. Got to let go of that need for certainty. Because if you have a need for certainty, nothing's ever going to happen. Because there are no certainties. And what you think is going to be certain, tell me you love me. Tell me you love me. Tell me you're never going to leave me. Tell me that I'm always yours. You know, that's bullshit that you hear 1,000 times in these stupid relationships. And then, man, when there's an argument, they're gone. I hated you all along. Really? Why didn't you? The dysfunction of relationships, the way we have them. Intuition. You know something? I've never been lied to when I didn't know that I was being lied to. I've never been used when I didn't know I was being used. The trouble is the conscious mind wanted to rationalize it or thought it could deal with it. In here, we know everything that's about to happen. And we know the honesty or integrity of the people we're dealing with. It never lies. What you feel, that's the internal self that's giving you a signal to stop or go. Now you have to differentiate this, the heart feeling, from the mind feeling. The mind feeling can create chaos, pain, confusion that blocks you. It's what's in your heart. That's intuition. Guide yourself by intuition. Freedom from the radical mind and the rational mind. And frequently the rational mind is the most radical mind. Look at what we call conservative medicine. Conservative medicine is radical mastectomy, coronary bypass operations, chemotherapy. To me, that's very radical. Whereas radical medicine is herbs, nutrition, meditation. What's radical about that? That's very conservative. We have juxtaposition terms, and people have bought it. And it shows the lack of depth in thinking and feeling. No reason is being used in our society. So easily manipulated because the more rigid you are, the more invulnerable you are, the lacking in intuition you are, the easier you are to manipulate and use. So people are using you. After all, you're not using you, so someone else is. They just see you as a commodity. You're not taking advantage of your life? Fine, I'll take advantage of it. Commitment. We're uncertain of what we want to commit ourselves to. What are we going to do with our lives? What are we committing ourselves for? Think for a moment. What is the most important thing you've committed yourself to in the last year? What? What have you committed yourself to that is as important or more important in your own life? Your health. All right. What else? Commitment to something that allows us to grow as a human being, to experience life, to experience ourselves, something that's greater than our life that we can connect to, which is frequently and hopefully the spiritual element of our lives. A meaning to be alive. If you have a meaning to be alive, you're at least committing yourself to that. If you don't have a commitment to your higher self, then you commit yourself to your lower self. And the lower self is indulgences, distractions. It's amazing how many people I know who felt almost resentful when they were in the spiritual community, what they were missing out on all the playthings within the, the consumerist community. So I knew a friend who went back in there and got the high-paying job, had the tennis and had the skiing and had the, trips to all the different resorts and the socializing and constant busyness. And this went on for 5 years. And then I had a chance to recently speak with this person. I said, all right, now you've had 5 years of engaging in complete time-consuming self-interest. How does it compare to what you were doing before? The person said, I couldn't believe how much time I used in trivializing my own life. These were all distractions, nothing more than distractions. 5 years of filling myself up with all the things that everyone else said were so important, and they weren't important at all. No, they're distractions, which are all right. There's nothing wrong with tennis, and there's nothing wrong with, skiing, as long as it's kept in perspective that that's not what we should be committing ourselves to. We should commit ourselves to a life. And what we do with that life should be our focus. How we can relax and engage and do things along the way, that's fine. All those things can be a part of it. But what happens when that becomes your life? When becoming successful becomes your life? When making money becomes your life? When being accepted becomes your life? And when having a healthy relationship becomes your life? Then you don't have a life. And then one day you wake up and you look in the mirror and you think, my God, this is how old I've gotten, and what have I got? What have I committed myself to? Wrong values, wrong decisions, based upon insecurity, vulnerability, and being a prisoner to the rational mind. You had all the things you thought would make you happy, and you don't have happiness because it's not sustaining on its own. You see, the key is, can you be happy with none of the things that you work so hard to get? And if you can, then you're a happy person. If you're not, then you're not a happy person. They were all disguising something. They were distracting you from what was really missing. So what you did is, very cleverly, the more reasonable, the more logical, the more manipulative your mind, you displace this inner uncertainty of self, this inner yearning, this inner emptiness. You displace that, put it away, denied it, avoid it, by filling up the time with something else. I'll keep myself busy. I'll have a social agenda. I'll have a political agenda. I'll have an emotional agenda. I'll have a work ethic agenda. And by doing all these things, I'll make myself look as if I'm so together that I'll be attractive to people. Yeah, but what are you to yourself? Can you live all right without those things? How are you going to feel? I'd feel terrible. I'd feel insecure, maladjusted. I'd feel out of it. Well, then what's that telling you? That's acting as an addiction to. That's an opiate. That's taking the place of inner nourishment. Remember, whatever you can't live with and you can't live without is unhealthy for you. So if a person says, I can't live without your love, it means they have no love because they're looking at you to supply it. What are the consequences of your actions or thoughts? Remember, everything in life, there's going to be a consequence to what we do. Are we willing to accept the consequences of our actions and thoughts? If we are, and if they're positive, something at least has a chance of coming from it. If they're negative, you know what's going to come from it. Negativity. If you're bitter and cynical, expect bitter and cynical returns. There's no mystery to this. So if you have an attitude that is a sharp attitude, that is a cynical attitude, what's going to come from that is cynicism and bitterness. So it's self-fulfilling. So look at the selfish person that's insecure and look at them in relationships. They're protective in the relationship and they use a relationship. What in the world do they think is going to come from that relationship? Nothing. Nothing. So at a certain point, you just got to stop everything and clean the boards. That's why I said go back to 3 lessons ago when we did the little thing on, I've had it. Well, you got to one day say, I've had it, clean the board, start from scratch, start now. Self-actualize new. How do your decisions affect others in your life? Because everything you do does affect someone else at some level. And if you can't affect people in a positive way, stop before you affect them in a negative way. Pause and say, let me look at the effects I'm having upon another person. I have no right to make another person feel worse or bad about themselves or to denigrate the human spirit of another person. How do others feel or respond to your actions? Now sometimes, I'll give you an example. Today, I was talking with Tony Brown. Did any of you see the AIDS special I did on Tony Brown?
Yes.
Well, he got a lot of positive reaction and he got some negative reaction. And what was interesting is the negative reaction was, you can't believe how a doctor called him and cursed him out. I mean, really cursed him out. How dare you have on Gary Null on the show? Where did he get those documents? I want those documents. I have a right to those documents. And Tony said, you don't have a right to anything, jerk. You know, said, Gary got those, and why don't you go do your homework? Because I held up documents showing that a person had improved and their doctor from the hospital. Well, I had the actual documents, and we showed them on television. Now this man, remember, if I hadn't showed those, he could say they didn't exist, right? Keep the myth up. It doesn't exist. There's not a shred of evidence. How many times have you heard that from these people in the other, the opposition camp? There's no proof. Now, what happens when you have the proof? Then they denigrate you for not giving it to them. Well, why don't you go get it? If I got it, you go get it. Go get it for yourself. And that's what Tony was saying. Hey, he's some professor from university up in Michigan. You go get it for yourself. Gary did his homework, you do yours. And he was very angry. Then another guy called and was just angry at the fact that that I wouldn't see him. I wouldn't see him personally about his AIDS. And so he got very angry about that. And I said, I spoke with 1,800 people. And that's enough. Because if all I do is speak with people all day long, I don't have time to do any of the other stuff that allows me to take this forward to help more people. And I gave them the names and phone numbers of doctors in their area who could help them. But that's not what they wanted. They just wanted hours of my time personally. If I didn't give it to them, then I wasn't a nice guy. And so Tony said, did he give you some leads? Did he tell you some nutritional things, changes? Yeah. Did he give you a doctor in your area? Yeah. So, no, but I wanted his time. Free. Well, that's unreasonable to expect that you would get time just because you want it. Why don't you call a lawyer and say, I want your time free now? Well, because I don't charge people for my time, they assume that it's worth nothing. And I don't care what a person has. If they don't respect the time I'm going to give them, I don't give it to them. Let them find someone else who they can play that game with. Because that takes time away from someone who I can help, who appreciates the help they're getting. Remember, any gift that you give that isn't respected, stop giving it. That is a foolish thing to give with people who do not respect what you are giving. It shows that we are not giving for the right reason. You have a right to determine the gifts that you're willing to give and hope that you're smart enough to know that the people who are going to use the gift are the people who respect it. By the way, let's face it, you've all experienced this, I'm sure. You give to people who don't respect what you're giving, they never do anything with what you give anyhow. The people who respect what you're doing are more likely to do something with it. But it was the idea there was anger. Anger from what? Anger from having options, anger from having an enlightenment. Yeah, because then someone's got to do something with it. Someone who's responsible will do something with it, will take it another step on their own. People who are codependent, people who are dysfunctional, expect you to do it for them. You do it for me. Why should I? It's your body, it's your life. You do it for yourself. Here are the resources, now do it. I don't want to do it. Oh, fine. Then what's your option? In the same way in a relationship, same way at work, same way in anything. You cannot force a person to change. You can't force a mind to open. You can't force a person to accept your love or to love. And the moment you force, it's like pushing a rope up a hill. It doesn't work. You have to encourage that which is natural and open. And if it isn't, it isn't. And that window of opportunity goes by. And I'll bet many of you have thought of the times when you weren't open and you weren't ready and things happened and you didn't take advantage of them. And that's it. In this life, we're given one chance for each occurrence, and it goes forever. There'll be other chances and other occurrences, but not that one. That's the thing about living each day as if it's the last. I'm going to live this day. This day counts. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. This day counts. And how would you change if you had to live this day as if it were your last, and then live every day if it were your last? I'll tell you something, you wouldn't trivialize your life. You wouldn't allow other people to waste your time. You wouldn't waste your own time. You'd make that life count for something, and that's what this is about. A lot of times people think they can't grow because they don't have any of the resources to grow. They can't get out of their rut because, they're not capable enough. I say that's not true. And I say it's not true because they're not aware of their own assets. Let's list some of the assets that you have that are capable of allowing you to grow, to enjoy life, to engage on all levels, and to make your life happen. First, on a spiritual level, what does the Spirit allow us to do? Whenever you have any problem, any crisis, what does the Spirit allow us to do? Overcome it. What else? To change. What else? It allows you to face the crisis because you have the strength inside that no matter how bad the crisis, you're still okay. All right? You may not always change what's out here, but you're certainly capable of being strong in here. And let's face it, how many times have we honored people who, even though they didn't make it, they may have died in their own cause, they died with a dignity and respect we have for them because they were heroes. And we respect that. We honor that. We always honor the hero because the hero's coming from the Spirit. A true hero, a holistic hero, has the Spirit always at the higher point of themselves. There's a sense of sacrifice. There's not a fear of sacrifice. Why do you think, for instance, a lot of average Joes spend more time recollecting the finest moments of their life were frequently in battle, in war? I remember listening to my father and his friends talk about their war stories. It's because it was the one time in their life, possibly the only time in their life, where they had a chance to be a hero. Where you'd hear about a guy, jumping towards a grenade that had fallen, or been thrown near them, and getting himself in between that and the other people. And all the people never forgot that. It was an incredible sacrifice. What greater sacrifice? And it made that person a hero. Just an average guy until that moment, then a hero. In battle, people become heroes. In other areas, that's why sports are so important, because the athlete who has the warrior spirit also becomes a hero. And other athletes are moved by this. It brings the best of ourself up if they're a wholehearted athlete. In so many areas, when we see in Somalia, and we see some of those people have gone there and are working to help those people, some of the volunteer doctors, before the current armed forces, people have been there for years trying to help people. There's a welling up inside when you see these people working and caring, and in the midst, there's no publicity. They're not doing it for any gain. They're doing it because they're honoring the Spirit. And it touches us. We're moved by it. We feel it. There's something in here that feels special. We instantly know what is real and true and the nature of those who are willing to sacrifice. Well, one of the ways that we can all grow is honoring the inner spirit. That is the warrior, the hero, the healer. Every human being has it. No one is devoid of it. It's acknowledging it, allowing it to come out. And suddenly you're a different human being. Because you don't face adversity in the old way, out of panic, desperation, overreaction, anger, anxiety. Instead, you say, it's okay, it's a problem, we'll deal with it. All right? We'll deal with it. And you always keep your balance. You don't overreact because you're confident that you're still going to be okay no matter what. That's an asset. So use this asset. Now we have also an intellectual asset. Our intellectual asset allows us to do what? Think of solutions, not just problems. What else? It allows us to reason. What else? To analyze. To look at all aspects of an issue. What else? To have choices, to know the value of each choice. What else? What else? It allows us to have a perspective. So we don't become overwhelmed by anything. We can choose to do something in a way that is reasonable to our needs. Now, emotional. Let's look at an emotional asset. How does a healthy emotion help you in this life?
Ability to feel.
Huh?
Ability to feel.
Not just an ability to fear, take it an ability to understand what we're feeling. If, for instance, every time something happens you have a feeling and you start to emote this feeling and you have a reaction to it, you have a chance to pull back and say, hold on, where did this emotion come from? Why is it every time something happens I feel this way? Something is happening that I'm not paying attention to because I'm not in control of this, something else is in control and I'm just reacting to it. The emotion allows you to get in touch with what you're feeling, what those feelings represent. Otherwise, all you do is you're in a pattern of behavior and the pattern never stops. It just keeps repeating itself. The emotions allow you to say, now at least I know that I'm feeling this. I'm responding to this. I can change it. I can understand it. I can adjust it. Our education, that's an asset. And not just academic education, but our life education. Our associations, surrounding ourselves with those people who encourage us and honor us. Our guilds, our groups, our friends, family, even the location where we're at. These are all assets. For instance, someone could say, oh yeah, New York, I was coming back recently from Texas on a plane and this person beside me, this hyper-reactive person just jiggling around and doing everything, books and, notes. And finally she looks at me because I was just sitting there meditating and she says, aren't you fidgety? I said, is there a reason to be fidgety? I said, she said, yeah, but it's just so long trip. I said, were you aware that it's going to be a 2-hour and 45-minute trip? Well, yes, but it's so long. I said, why did it have to be long? I said, if you did a meditation, you wake up and it's over. It's not long. It's what you make it. You have to choose to make it long. And then with long, you have to choose to be impatient. And then with impatience, you have to choose that it's discomforting. And since there's no regular routine you can use to distract yourself, telephone, television, radio, running about, busyness, you're confined to an area. This sense of helplessness, of not controlling yourself, is what you actually feel irritated about. Not the fact that you're on a plane, because if you were in a car, it'd be 27 hours. In a plane, it's 2.5 hours. I said, and if you meditated, it would be 5 minutes. So the smart person meditates. It gets in there faster without any of the disease. And I said, let me guess. You're a marketing person in PR or advertising? She said, how'd you know? So I worked for an advertising agency. I said, it draws a certain hyper-personality because the constant need for input, and it overstimulates. It keeps a person so stimulated that inevitably all these people burn out. But she hated New York. She's telling me everything wrong with New York. And I said, well, you're both right and wrong. I said, yes, there is crime, but there's crime in every city in America. And yes, there's violence everywhere.